start by defining resilience.
When I think of resilience, I always have like the image of me walking in front of me. So I need like a foot on the ground that gives me stability and a foot in the air that gives me flexibility, and to being able to reflect on what gives me this core stability and what gives me therefore the ability to move and to decide in which direction I want to go. Resilience is not just something that I can react to because of a challenge is occurring, but it also gives me the ability to dive into something new, to be not behind the wave or riding the wave, but also be before the wave. What is also really interesting for organization and teams.
Anna, I'm very excited to have you on the Core Impact podcast. This episode for me is very unique because on one side, it's kind of another deep reflection after doing the MBA with you. And this is something that for me can stay and also at the same time will help others, hopefully, who wants to know more about resilience, about leadership, about organizational psychology. But before we dive deep into these topics, I would like to ask you a question, simple question. Who are you? Without telling me any titles, without telling me about your country, about your age, etc. Who are you as a human being?
That's a really simple one. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. And yes, to the question, who am I and how many? So there are a lot of different answers, of course. So I would say my passion is to guide people, systems, and organization during like challenging times and change processes and fullest potential when you reach out to like a really big term. So, and here I come from different directions. So I studied psychotherapy science. I'm a behavioral psychotherapist. So I also work with individuals in their challenging processes. But my main work is to work with leaders and with their teams and organization during challenging times. And not only challenging times, but also the like intention to develop and to grow. Of course, these two aspects, working like in a more like bigger context and working in like a smaller context with individual, combines the resilience. So this is that connects like my two fields of profession, I would say, and many more, of course. But I think it comes and falls a lot with that, and that's brought me also to the term of resilience that I really want to dive into it and be curious about it, how it works, what do you need in order to be, and what environments do you need to have, and so on. Like these kind of questions I'm really interested in. And of course, it's also something that I'm living off and something that helps myself in order to cope with the situation that we are all around it, because it is really tough times, I would say, in context that we're now operating in. And like these types of things and questions help me also to cope with all of these stuff.
Let's start by defining resilience. How do you define it?
In one term, it is how to cope with challenging times, how to overcome problems, situation, challenges, but also, and here comes the term of anti-fragility within it to get to place, to learn from it and reflect on what we have learned from it. So when I think of resilience, I always have like the image of like me walking in front of me. So I need like a foot on the ground that gives me stability and a foot in the air that gives me flexibility. And to being able to reflect on what gives me this core safetyness and stability, and what gives me therefore the ability to move and to decide in which direction I want to go. So resilience is not just something that I can react to because of a challenge is occurring, but it also gives me the ability to dive into something new, to be not behind the wave or riding the wave, but also be before the wave. What is also really interesting for organization and teams. Yeah. So it's competencies to, when outside like a change come or a change impulse comes, to overcome it, but also thinking of how can we can we like thrive before this wave is coming even. Yeah. And yeah, I would, it's not that easy to make it in like in one sentence. Of course, there
Yeah.
are different definitions, but I would describe myself like the ability of like being in now, responsive, but also being in the future of like active and yeah.
From what I understand is like connecting your present with your vision,
Mhm.
right? And being flexible with the challenges that the changes that come on the way. So let's
Yeah.
say I want to come from here to there. This is my vision. Make it simple. Like I cannot go in a straight line. There are challenges that makes me go right and left, but in the end, I know what is the destination that I want to reach, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's a beautiful definition.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
There is something also we talked about during the challenge that I would like to hear from you about, and maybe you can give also some examples how you understand them and how you embody them. So these are the four types of resilience, right? There's the emotional, the mental, the physical, and the social, right?
Mhm.
So would you like to explain, or maybe also some examples, either from you or someone you know, or like anything, stories you maybe you can add to simplify these four?
So you're talking about like more the individual aspect here. So of course, you have different kind of resources within us. This would be how the competencies, how we can also surrender in the emotions that we are feeling right now and trying to figure out how it's going to end up, in what kind of action it's going to end up. So giving us the allowance to feel what is now asked for.
Mm,
Um, like the cognitive aspect would be being aware of how do I think right now? What kind of cognitive patterns do I have
mm,
inside? Also, that is based on several experiences that I had, and like I see it like a street network of a lot of like driving cars, yeah, motorways, and who are always like played over and over again, whatever impulse comes. Yeah. So, and resilience on that term is being aware of what my inner beliefs are, what my inner
mm,
impulses are, what my strategies are, what my different coping mechanisms are when like a challenging situation occurs. Yeah. What are my stress patterns, and so on and so on. Yeah. Physically, of course, there are so many different aspects, of course, of health. How do I feel in my body? How do I treat my body right? How do I move? How do I give me the right space to breathe? How, so there are so several aspects. And I think that most easiest aspect of resilience to relate to, yeah, because we see
mm,
body is resilient or not if it is healthy. Yeah. And if you treat it if you treat it right. Yeah. And the social aspect, of course, to have a good social network. This can be in the private space, of course, having the family, having partners, having friends that support you in difficult times or also in good times, where you can connect on a real basis. And but also in the company that you're working with, or in the work environment that you're working, like with your team, with your leadership person, whatever. So all these aspects is that we really drive for connection and need
mm,
honest connection, and this builds up also to resilience, of course.
mm.
Yeah.
How can you live resilience in these four types?
Mm.
Maybe you can also share either from you or what you generally see that's most useful.
Mhm.
When you talk about physical, maybe it's easy to say like do sport, go to the gym, or do any kind of activities, and also take care of your body, what you eat, etc.
Mhm.
And social, also like be surrounded with people who are supportive, like-minded people. maybe you would like to add more, but I'm interested more in what would you say about the emotional and the mental? What
Mm,
are the habits that you can do?
mm. So, but the emotional aspect, society takes a really important part, because there are emotions that we are likely and allowed to feel and acknowledge.
Mm,
There are emotions that are not so comfortable
mm,
to be confronted by. And here comes the social aspect again. So when we are in an environment where we feel the freedom and the safetyness to act on the emotions that we have right now, it is way easier to show them and to act on them. And having the emotions as like also as an impulse from our nervous system, that they say you need to act on something. Here's something that gives you an impulse from outside and inside to cope with that. And when I'm not feeling the right emotion, and when I don't have even the words, yeah, in many cases, in people, like when I work with people, is that they don't even have the words for the emotion that they are feeling right now,
mm,
that they can't even name it. And this is a really huge problem, this, when you don't even have like the words to describe how you're feeling. So, like, sometimes you need to work on, just to really work with the person on what is the feeling that you're feeling right now. So when this situation occurs, is it like joy? Is it like are you nervous? Are you excited? Or is it more frustration or bitterness? Also, that's a really difference of, are you frustrated or are you bitter in something? Are you sad? Are you angry? Like, also to try to figure out what does my emotion want to say to me, and
mm.
how can I act on that, and what do I need in order of that? And here comes the needs into play. So being aware of my needs in that situation when I'm feeling some certain feelings. So what is helpful now? When I'm sad, when I'm angry, how do I cope with that? And how do I, and what do I need in order to cope with that in a healthy way? Yeah.
So if you say here it's about awareness, you don't have to have a habit. Is it what am I understanding it right?
Yeah, of course, habits are good because they help us to,
Mm,
they give us structure, for example, in some certain times. They give us like hold, and routines gives us stability. Yeah.
mm,
And as when you think of teams and organization as well, so structures and routines and processes and all of that, that gives us stability. Yeah. And the same thing with habits. But habits can be also like from outside, like irritated. So when you have the habit of, one of my core resilient resources is when I'm going jogging in the morning. Yeah.
mm,
It can happen that you have an injury and you're not allowed to jog.
mm,
And then you're disrupted. And then you have to think about, okay, what is the core principle behind that, what I need? So what different aspects do I have in order to move my body, for example, or treat my body well? Because sometimes it's not the motion that I need, or like the physical high pulse, but sometimes it's like the more silent thing,
mm,
going into meditation, or going to like a more like stressless situation mode. Yeah. And also being able to listen to that. And I think that's the key, to be able to listen what your body needs, and what your like your system, like your heart needs and your brain needs, in order to just to follow some routines or habits. I know they are important, but first of all, it is really important to know what you need in order to decide if it's still the right thing. Yeah, because sometimes you wake up in the morning and maybe it's not the right thing for you to go for a jog. Yeah,
mm,
it's something else that you need. Maybe it's like a yoga session, or sleeping in for one more hour. Yeah, what's also like knowing your body. Maybe I need rather 7 hours of sleep than 6 hours of sleep. Yeah, and to be here flexible. And the same thing is when you think of organizations and teams. Most of the times we try to figure out, or like structures and processes give us the stability, but these are required to change the most when a change from outside. So thinking of something that is like the base and the core, the roots of the tree that gives you hold, like values, like principles, like trust, like connection, like psychological safety, things that gives us hold during these changes of structure, routines, and habits that we always can refer to. A psychological safe space where we can talk about our fears, where we can talk about our anger, where we can share our successes and learn without any doubt. Yeah. These are the core principles of like resilience of like an individual, team, and organizational level.
While you are listening to the Core Impact podcast, please take a moment to pause and share with me. How do you feel? Are you enjoying the conversation, feeling inspired, or something else? I would love to know your feelings in the comments. For me, psychological safety, we studied at the MBA. I heard about it a lot. I hear it on LinkedIn, for example, from lots of leaders and everything, podcasts and books. When it comes to workplace, when I listen to my friends, colleagues, for example, who I used to work with in the past, I asked them like, how are they, etc. Many people, and also my circle, many people that I know are already in this impact work. They are ESG, sustainability, etc. You assume that there is higher possibility or probability to have in these environments psychological safe places. But most of the time, what I hear is this something that we aim for? Is something a kind of aspiration, but it's not really lived. So what is your take on it? How do you see it? How do you perceive it? Is it something that's already evolving and maybe in some areas, not other areas? And what can we do about this?
So, so just looking at the systems that I'm working with, I can't see a pattern. Of course, the term is more and more present, and of course you are able to talk about that. So I think like when you look back like 5-10 years back, like the terms to say you need a psychological safe space, some people may eye roll you and say, no.
Mm,
But now, at least now, it is way more easy just to say there's so much science behind it
mm,
and so much research behind it and so many examples why it is needed. And people are way more open to talk about it. And also they can identify with it. So they, for sure, when I ask them questions, have you ever experienced a psychological unsafe space? So a space where you're not able to talk freely, where a space where you have the feeling everything that you say is turned around and yeah, behind your back is happening a lot that you don't want to happen, and so on and so on. So have you ever experienced that? And then the opposite, have you experienced a space where the opposite is happening? And what do you think are the key successors factors of this state? And to talk with these leadership teams or management boards about that, and also trying to figure out how does it show up in behavior, for example, and reflect on what are here your key success factors in order to provide such a space. Yeah. And most of the times it is the leadership team that you have to work with in order that the change is really integrated and the change is really like, yeah, integrated sustainably, I would say, and faster. You need to work with the leadership team on firstly to build a psychological safe space within their team, like with their peers. Most of the times that even happen.
mm,
Then trying to figure out, okay, what can you do as a leader to provide that space? And what I also don't want to I don't want to put so much pressure on the leaders itself because I think they have really, really much today. But it's also the responsibility of the organization to provide these kind of structures and frameworks that the leaders can act on that. Yeah. And that's always like this interconnectedness between these levels of organization, teams, and individuals. Yeah. So you need to provide a space as an organization where leaders can lead resilience and where leaders can lead a psychological safe space, yeah, and have the freedom and the responsibility to decide how they want to decide in terms of like this context. So you have to look at these different aspects, yeah, when you consult like in this area.
Mm.
And of course, a leader also not because of how he treats people, but also how he treats him or herself. And so, how am I dealing with challenges? How do I share where I did mistakes or where I maybe made the wrong decision or where I maybe acted wrongly when I was maybe when I'm in a stress pattern, I will get louder. Yeah, and sharing that experiences and sharing that with your team, please don't take it personally and let me know when I do that and when I switch into that pattern that I constantly change it and rewire my like brain function and cognitive behavior function that I'm changing in a more like sustainable way and being open about that process, for example.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you can be also vulnerable as a leader in that term to provide that space. And this, of course, needs in a lot of terms boldness as a leader. Yeah. So somebody needs to make the first step.
Mm.
The others feel the freedom also to act on that.
Mm.
And of course, when a leader does that, it has the most impact. Sometimes there are people in the team that are in many times very bold and show it. But what is most like hindering such a process is when somebody is like showing that what is invited, but then there are consequences for that.
Mm.
You can't invite, please be open, please share your mistakes, and please share all your failures. It won't happen anything. But on the other time, when somebody is sharing it and they have consequences and they need to, I don't know, put on more work or um, there is not the right reaction to that, nobody is going to do it anymore.
Mm.
So it's a very fragile stake when I invite something and I'm not able to react on it, what I'm inviting to. So
Mm.
be aware of what you invite,
Mm.
what you ask.
Mm.
And sometimes people or leadership teams come to us and say, these are the employee surveys, and here do we have fields of action, and we want to act on it. And this is great because this is already like an impulse of we ask you and we want to react on it and act on it. We want to change something. But when I ask these questions, what we should change and what should we improve, and the people open themselves up and nothing happens afterwards, it's very frustrating.
Mm.
You have like the belief, okay, it doesn't matter what I share. And then they are not sharing. And then there's no psychological safety. And then there's no learning. And then there's no resilience and so on and so on. So there's like this overlapping circumstances afterwards. And it's really, really important also when you consult kind of companies or contexts to ask what happened in the past.
Mm.
Because sometimes like they tried and there are some like incidences that people have like in them that made them not really free to overcome it in a certain way. So really need to work that out and try to figure out what is still here and not resolved and still in the air, like the elephant in the room that we need to address
Mm.
in order to move forward.
Mm.
Yeah.
Since you talked about vulnerability, Anna,
Hmm.
and as a leader, what is you can share one mistake that you made in the past that shaped how you think and embody leadership, resilience, and change management?
One mistake that I made.
Yeah, that you learned something from it, so now you can take the first bold step.
So I would say I have a huge inner driver that says faster, go fast,
Mm.
and um, do more. And this inner driver is sometimes really useful, really,
Mm.
and helps me. But sometimes it also is like hindering motion, because sometimes people in my team or my colleagues need like a more like another loop of reflection, for example, or are not here to move yet because they need to surrender in the moment right now. And here my pressure that comes into pressure
Mm.
can hinder movement.
Mm.
And being aware of when is this pressure, also looking on myself, when is this pressure really useful? And when I want to invite this pressure and this inner driver,
Mm.
this pulse that I have? And when do I really need to say, you're not invited now.
Mm.
Please lean back,
Mm.
take a breath, a deep breath, and surrender with this, what is happening right now, and trying to figure out if maybe another direction or maybe an solution is now important. And this is something that I'm constantly learning throughout the challenge and my personal development. Because of course there are always new challenges, and of course this is a pattern that worked really well for me in the last years. But the more I influence or I'm surrounded by people that are working with me, the more responsibility do I have with my action. And when I step into the shoes of a leader, or when I step into the shoes of a colleague, or I step into the shoes even as an employee, yeah, um, try to figure out where is it useful and where do I need to surrender.
Mm.
And that's a challenge that I'm always constantly learning.
Mm.
And
Now,
also vulnerability in it. Yeah.
mm.
Team colleagues know about it. So sometimes they are very like humorous and like play with the Anna with the like pressure sector is here again, and she's like kicking us in the ass. And sometimes they say, okay, this is not invited now. We
Mm.
did it, or maybe this gives me too much pressure and I can work on this pressure. Yeah. Because there are other persons who can't work under pressure, and other persons who really can work under pressure. So also figuring out how my team is reacting to it and when is it invited and when not.
Mm.
Yeah.
I want to give you a virtual high five, and because actually this is one of the things that I'm reflecting on also recently. It's about being overexcited sometimes, and especially when I want to collaborate with someone on any project. In different examples, I feel like I'm kind of, for me, it's like there is inner motivation that shows lots of excitement. At the same time, if the other person, for many reasons, they are not yet ready, that could look like, I'm pushing. For me, it's like I'm giving impulses, let's do it. And the other person, and then they will go back. And for me, it's kind of learning how to be in flow, as you were saying, also in your way, and how to dance with life. Sometimes come back, sometimes go
Yeah.
back, but in the end, yeah, where to be invited, and see how things can flow effortlessly, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Um, being in the flow and being able to decide what is when needed, and being also able to decide new.
Mm.
And it was yesterday really useful. Maybe it's not today.
Mm.
And also being able to say maybe yesterday it was the right way to go right, but maybe it's tomorrow it's the left direction, or none of them, and I just need to sit down on the floor and try to figure out in which direction do we want to go.
Mm.
And sometimes it is like this movement and this speed, yeah, is also hindering myself and also the people that I'm working with to slow down and reflect on it a little,
Mm.
try to figure out
Mm.
still the right way that we are heading to, not just to get to the end. And one saying that is really like so precious to me, and that I'm saying to myself all the time when I feel myself like in this speed, is the process you take to get to the future is the future you get.
Mm. Now.
So this sometimes needs a little while just to really sink in. So when I have like a goal in front of me, and you can have like a goal of like a week goal to say, okay, I want to end this kind of like presentation or whatever. You can have a career goal, Yeah, you can have like a personal goal where you want to like live up to. And sometimes we are so captured to this goal, and we just want to thrive to that, to the most fastest way. But when we arrive in this goal, we are most of the times really exhausted when we don't really look after ourselves, and we just say ourselves, okay, when I reach this goal, then I can relax, and then I'm happy, and then I'm like, I don't need to do anything. And that's most of the times bullshit, because of course it goes on, because then you have another goal and another goal, and you have the same patterns that you learned and you never changed, and adapt to the next goal. So when I constantly imagine myself that at the end of this year, at the end of this goal, and when I reached it, then I have my pause, or until the holiday, then I can recharge. Yeah. Um, I have to do it one as all over again as soon as I have a next goal. But instead, when I try to figure out, I really want to have this position, a higher leadership position, for example. Um, and of course, I can do like I perform at its highest and be really like fast and say yes to everything what comes into my mind and what comes from outside, and be there and do and do and do. And then I reach finally the goal. Of course, everybody is accepting you to be like that, like you were before. So you build up an image, of course, you build up an image for yourself, you build up an image from all of the people that you're working with. And it's hard to say, okay, now I let loose.
Yeah.
Now I lean back. I have
Mm.
a position, and yeah, now I'm happy. And most of the time, this doesn't work. Yeah,
Mm.
because you never learned how to do it otherwise. Yeah, and we try to like. Of course, we develop some coping mechanisms that most of the times are not very healthy. Coping mechanism like on a small case, like smoking or um, drinking to an end, or having longer holidays to recharge, and then coming back to a really like stressful situation, not looking after ourselves, like sacrifice our mental or physical health in order to move forward, and then you end up in a goal that you never wanted.
Mm. I just remembered the Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember he said like there are two ways of being unhappy. Either that you don't reach your goal,
Yep.
and the second one is you reach it. And it reminds me also, this reminds me of myself. A few years ago, I was studying for a certificate called a CFA certificate in ESG investing.
Mm-hmm.
And back then it was like one of the certificates I wanted to take to give me like, the proof that I know about ESG to move from finance to ESG. And I studied for it a few months and everything. I remember after 5 minutes, I finished the exam. I got the result. I passed. I got it.
Mm-hmm.
After 5 minutes, I started crying. I was unhappy and I didn't know why back then. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect example for that. And of course, I on a so the last year, of course, as we also talked in the beginning, was also something that reminded myself of, okay, here I'm in a state of like my inner drivers go faster and do more, that already had an impact on my physical well-being and emotional well-being. And most of the times your body takes what he needs or she needs, and reminds you from, okay, now it's a break.
Mm.
You need it. And in order not to force yourself and your body to like pull this break again, is to be aware of what patterns arise when you are in this mode. Yeah. What can you witness about yourself? And here it comes like the how you observe a second order, you say. So how can you observe yourself doing something?
Mm.
And so the ability to observe yourself doing something, and the ability to recognize when you are in caught up into patterns that doesn't serve you. Yeah.
How often can you do this? Like, can you observe yourself? For example, now I'm thinking about it. It would be great if every time, for example, doing the podcast, every time I'm doing the podcast, I'm present with you at the same time. Imagine myself from another angle. Is this something that
Mhm.
you can do consistently? How is it?
I would say I think it's not that easy to be present and in a real connection with the person, and doing it.
Okay.
Um, at least I can't. So
Okay.
when I'm really like connected with a person,
Mm,
I really try to understand you, to hear you, to listen,
mm,
to
mm,
listen without like being in my back head and trying to figure out maybe what do I want to answer next.
mm,
And I caught myself as well in this situation now, like in this podcast situation. Of course, you want to like answer really smart and you give good answers to your questions. And while you are asking the question, of course, my head is still like thinking of, okay, what can I say? So, and then I'm not really with you
mm,
because I'm already caught up in my mind and trying to figure out what I want to say and what I say smart. And but when I like suspend this and try to figure out, okay, why do you ask this question now? Why is it important to you to think about that? And why is it important
mm,
for you to talk about habits? Why is it
mm,
important for you to understand psychological safety and so like in leadership positions so essential? Yeah, we always talk about active listening, but what is active listening?
mm, mm,
Not trying to download something that we already know and we anticipate what he or she is going to say and trying to figure out what smart answers do I have or what response do I need in order that he or she does that or does that not. And so I hope I'm not saying something wrong here, but I believe from my experience when I'm really connected in a conversation with someone else, it's hard to step into this position of second order and try to figure out, okay, where am I sitting? What is going on inside of me? What resonance do I have right now? Am I in my typical pattern here? But I can like reflect on it in the past. So I
mm,
can sit here after our talk and reflect on the talk and try to figure out, okay, how was it? How did I feel?
mm,
Um, when did I notice that stress arise in me? What was here my typical response? What was here my typical coping mechanism? This is of course possible. Or we make together a timeout.
mm,
Okay, let's reflect together on this perspective and try to figure out, okay, what happens here? Maybe also why do we don't get a connection? Why isn't it, or why does it? So what helped us to go into that space that like we forgot the time that we
mm,
what I want to actually answer, what I really want to point out of again, and whatever. And to reflect on that on the meta perspective was what was the key success factors, and maybe also what was the factors that it didn't happen, for example. This
mm,
is of course possible. And these
mm,
timeout situations are so important that so when I work with teams and also like leaders to say, please treat yourself with these timeouts.
mm,
You can do it like in the meeting, you can do it afterwards, just to reflect on the meta perspective. What did we have? Like, how did we do? So I had a coaching with two like leaders with one higher position, one lower position. The lower position is going to take over the higher position when he's retiring, and they are in a huge conflict here.
mm,
So, and the tension is getting bigger and bigger between them.
mm.
And so, first of all,
Was it kind of coaching and therapy at
it
the
was
same time?
It was coaching, primarily coaching. Of course, I have my lens of psychotherapy, of course, but it was nothing pathologically. Uh,
Uh,
so it was in the context of I was invited to coach this situation. Um, and of course, so when this connection is so heated up and you have like pictures and story of the opposite and like so massively present, you can't see objective on some certain situation. Everything you witness is like eating or feeding this story that I have from the person. Everything feels unsafe. The person is not able, tries to figure out, okay, I can't say anything because I'm not understood right, or I'm feeling like this belief about me. The other is just like constantly angry that he or she is not really talking to me honestly and authenticity and whatever. So these are like always like challenging each other. And here it was first of really important, like to throw everything on the table, everything that was really constantly in their mind and head, and every belief about them, every story was really important to name and to try to step back and hear the opposite story about the story. So telling each other the story, how it arised in me, and how the gap between these different stories are really, really big. And this is the challenge to do afterwards, after this coaching. Then the coaching was good, and they have like had, I think they used the term, it was like a cleaning thunderstorm. And afterwards we also decided, okay, so let's do after like interaction that you have with each other where you were not able to reflect on a matter perspective, how you doing. And there are many components together, like when you are in a virtual space, it's way harder to connect because when there's no safe space, you are like constantly like insecure. Maybe there's maybe there's so much harder. So the first intervention is when you don't have like you in presence, so talk afterwards and talk about how you were feeling and how, like a little check up, pulse check together. Are we in the right spot? And these experiences, like to reflect together and try to figure out on a more connection way if we are on the same spot, are the key factors of building up psychological safety after like a really tension situation between persons.
And then there are two things that came to my mind when you were talking about active listening. I just heard the coach today in a podcast saying that as a coach, if I go to a coaching session and I know already what are the questions that I will ask, then this is not coaching. Because my questions should be always tailored to the situation and what the person needs. And I cannot do what the person needs. And this is something that I cannot know in advance. I can only do in the present. And the second one is we were talking about like how you were, how will you reflect also on yourself? For example, after the podcast, you reminded me of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know him. That we are all work in progress, he says. So it doesn't matter how much you work on yourself. It makes me always, it humbles me to see leaders everywhere when they are really truly leading from within. Yeah, nobody is there. Yeah, you know, it's just everyone is on a different journey, but the most important thing is to enjoy this journey and to know what is your vision, right?
Yeah, exactly. That brings also the vulnerability, because everybody is on their journey, as you said, having also in mind that everybody is still learning on their space and a pace, and whatever kind of topic they are now occurring, it is different, but we are all in our way connected with that. Yeah, and to the active listening parts, I can recommend Otto Schama, who is also constituted the theory review and did a huge like deep dive into the different levels of listening. And this is something that we really like to use when we work with leadership teams, to be aware what kind of listening is when in what situation suitable. And also, and what do you need to in order to get into that state of listening. So when the listening is, it is the downloading, the factual listening, the empathic listening, and the generative listening.
Mm.
And when you need, when you have a situation with an employee, for example, where the employee is like really struggling, and not feeling well, and maybe he's not speaking openly about it, but he's showing in a other term, empathic listening is asked.
Mm.
Trying to figure out, okay, what do you need now? I can feel that I can feel that you're struggling with something, or I can see a difference between like 2 weeks ago and now. What is it? Like giving the space to share.
Mm.
Um, but this is not really possible when you are constantly like having hundred of to-dos and
Mm.
really tight schedule, when you are like overwhelmed with like the complexity of the day, you're not able to listen empathically. Then you follow up into the downloading mode, where you just like listen to the thing that the person is saying and trying like to replicate what you already can think of. Yeah.
Mm.
And are not really connected with the person.
So
And
the downloading means that I just repeat what they say, but without empathy, or
downloading is actually the moment when you like listen to something that you already know. So nothing is changing.
okay.
You just give you the proven and acceptance of that what you know is already like, you don't know, learn something new. Nothing changes in yourself. Nothing changes in your like mind, in your knowledge. Everything is like same.
But
Yeah.
is it my mind makes this trick that, oh yeah, I know it already. My mind have these biases and selecting what say. Okay, yeah, I know it already. I don't have to listen to the rest.
Yeah, and this is very easy because this is a very energy saving mode, of
Mm.
course. Yeah, so when we constantly in like meetings from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., for example. Yeah, constantly in half-an-hour meetings. There's no space to listen openly or factual or empathic or generative. There's no
Mm.
space. So you're just inviting the downloading because you have to you have to do so much and to interact with so much and
Mm.
so much that nothing new has like place for it. Yeah. But at some point, it is very important downloading. So when I scream fire, I don't want anybody to like question my impulse.
Mm. Mm.
I don't want you to think from, is there really a fire? What if is there when there's no fire? And do I even want to run? And I'm not sure if I want to respond to somebody who screaming. I don't know what kind of question. I just want you to react and to
Mm.
download. This is now happening. I need to leave the room. Yeah. And factual listening is actually something when you like imagine yourself at the university at our challenge, for example. Yeah. When you listen to something that makes a difference to something that you already know in your mind, when you have the same sort,
Mm.
interest, this is something new. And this makes a difference to that I already can think of. And maybe I want to integrate it and maybe it is useful for me or maybe not, but it makes a difference. And empathic listening is something I step into someone else's shoes, and try to figure out how the person feels. So I'm not in my space anymore. I'm stepping into someone else's shoes. Yeah. And the generative listening is a little bit harder to explain, but when you imagine yourself as a coach, just listen.
Mm.
As the example that you already shared, like when you already have the questions that you want to ask, you're not a good coach. Because when you're here not present and you can anticipate the potential in the client in just listening and being present, that your client can think of the solution and tell the solution, but your client feels so empowered to your presence of listening when they talk that they have like ideas how they can react on it and do, yeah, and generate some new solutions from themselves.
Mm.
And of course, and the opposite, you have also a bit of monologue, like empathic, like dialogue. debate, and so on and so on. So this is really a really worth input from Prashana, that he has really nice YouTube videos about it to dive into that topic deeper.
So what I am understanding is active listening is not one size fits all. You know, you have always to listen and respond in a certain way. It always depends on the situation. It's important also to be aware what situation you are in, what needs do you have, what needs the other person have, and how can you communicate accordingly.
And being able to decide that you are now, like, being aware of you are downloading right now, and also consciously decide that you are downloading. But this is also a good solution, and this is necessary in terms, because when you have to work at the, I don't know, few more hours, and you say, okay, when I now open myself up empathically or factually, I'm not able to survive until the end of the day. Yeah. Then it's a conscious decision that you say, okay, now I'm in downloading mode. I lean back and I'm like in cinema now. Yeah. And that comes and falls with everything. Yeah. So as soon as and here comes also the observation second order into place. Yeah. When you're aware of what patterns arise, and that you are consciously choosing that pattern or that strategy, it's a decision, and it's okay. When you say, okay, I need to move on fast, and I know my really clear direction to my employees are worth it, to make clear direction, no discussion. This brings me fast to the goal. But I also know that my employees maybe afterwards need some reflection time why I did that and whatever. This is a conscious decision. But if kept like really forced by my brain and self into being this unconsciously like responding mode, yeah, that's the tricky part. And that's actually one of the like also self-resilience to be aware of how I act and react, and what do I need in order to be resilient in times of challenge.
I'm curious, what are the biggest 1 or 3 misconceptions that you see people have about resilience?
Hmm. 1 or 3 misconceptions. So I think the biggest one would be that you can solve resilience on like an individual way, like when you can put a band-aid on it. So sometimes we get clients or customers come and say, there's a team member who is struggling very hard. He's near to the burnout. Please take him to a coaching and solve that. And of course, this serves the person, of course, to like in crisis, you need someone to talk to and try to be stabilized again. But what we always say as well is we try to figure out what brought the person here. What factors maybe also are missing on an organizational way and also on a team way. Like, how is the team dynamic? How is the leadership? What kind of leadership culture is in that organization? What structures do you have, or what core beliefs do an organization have? How people should have to be performed? Yeah. So when you have the core belief, everybody needs to take the extra mile, and then of course you have the inner driver to do the extra mile all the time. Because when I'm not doing that, I'm not part of the company culture anymore. Not of the like being in that rewarded position. So also being aware of what brought the person here in this situation. And of course, there are a lot of circumstances, and maybe there are also private circumstances, but you have so much power within like team dynamic and organization to like compensate when one person is struggling. And when the team is here in failure, also you have to figure out why is the team not compensating that in a term, and maybe also what resources does the team need, yeah, in order to be able to deal with that, yeah. Otherwise, the symptom is cured, but it shows maybe on the other end, and that's, I think, one of the core mistakes when you think about resilience, that you think it isolated. Yeah. So it is everything intertwined, and it is always dependent, and interdependencies are always here. And that's why it's so necessary also for leaders to be able to go into this meta perspective and look at, yeah, and see the systemic like dependencies here. I think it's better that structure follows culture and not culture follows structure. So sometimes we try to figure out what kind of meetings can we do that people can have feel safe. Then we have like, or what kind of roles can we have, like the happiness manager of the office or whatever. So we can do here and there some things that people can feel more resilience, or we open up an anonymous like postcard systems where you can like reach out. And most of the times this doesn't solve the problem, because when people don't feel safe, they're not going to use it. And with people not resilient, structures are not going to like really, really help here. So you really need to take a step back and try to figure out, okay, what kind of core principles should be changed in order to maybe rethink some structures. And of course, acting as a leader on that, and being present as a leader in these decisions. Yeah.
I really liked it.
Mm.
I think it also connects with something that structures is structure, as you said, is good for the long term. To have system, to have structure, to have data, etc. But this is the mind wants to control things sometimes if it's not coming with the heart. Because when you lead from your heart, also then you can see broader perspective. You can see things from different angles, and you can connect things in different ways, and then you can find both. And okay, you have structures after this, after you know what is the problem until you solve it, right? Yeah.
I can actually another one. So when we in crisis mode, we tend, and when I also stay in the organizational context, and this is actually something that I witness in a lot of organizations right now, that we tend to switch into old patterns again. Patterns that worked in the past, patterns that served us long, and is also really good to have them in your package, but patterns that might not serve us in like this complexity world we are living in right now. These patterns sometimes connect with high hierarchy, like decisions, and a lot of like authority playing as a leader. And this is something that when you are in a crisis, it is important for us that we can act on it. So when you imagine yourself in a challenge, you have like the impulse to do something about it. And this doesn't change when you are in an organization. So when you are in an employee, you want to do something because you are in crisis mode. So when you have like a leader that is very controllable and want to decide anything by themselves and want to like very micromanagement wise, and you take the like this power of people away that actually want to perform and act on it. Yeah. So of course it's really, really important that leaders decide and make decisions, and give the stability that they need. But in you can't. It is really important that the people still feel competent. So have the feeling I can handle it. It is important that they feel self-efficient. Yeah. So what I do makes an impact or a difference. It is important that they have meaning to their work. So I have a sense of like purpose to that, and it adds up to a bigger cause into the whole. And they want to have an impact on something. They want to see, okay, what I do has an impact on things that we are all thriving for. Yeah. And this is something that you take away when you are too much in this control mode as a leader and take this action position from employees away. So experiencing oneself as capable and effective is like the antidote to something that is called like crisis paralysis. When you're not able to move, when you're in resignation mode. And when you're in this resignation mode, you're not able to do anything. And this is exactly the opposite that a leader or an organization needs, actually. Crisis.
From your view and your work, what do you think are the top 3 important skills that each change maker must have in the next decade?
So I would say there's one skills that is called anticipatory thinking. So being able to anticipate some certain kind of stuff, things like encourage scenario thinking, I think I would say. So build up adaptive capability instead of rigid plans. Being able to read the field. This is also, here comes like the competency of like systemic thinking as well. So also situational awareness. So accurately sense what is happening emotionally and structurally, I would say. Listening before deciding. Yeah. Also adds up to staying connected to the people and create like space where honest feedback and learning takes place. So this would all be like in this read the field, how we're doing. Yeah. And also pattern recognition, I would say. Like being aware of the patterns that we always constantly act on when we are in crisis mode, when we are in stress levels, or even when we are in like in good times. Like there are also your good patterns. And being able to be consciously about that. And of course, yeah, dealing with complexity, ambiguity, yeah, to be able as leaders to stay like to hold stability and change simultaneously, yeah, to be the stability component, but also in the flexible state. That's the most important. This is a lot actually to learn, but these all adds up then to resilience, of course. Getting to know yourself, getting to know your patterns, being able to observe yourself, yeah, and being able to connect. So I think this is also one of the most important like factors of how we deal with in the future is to build up networks that connect with each other, yeah, and support each other.
Thank you, Anna. So I'm gonna come back to the keywords: anticipatory thinking, as like know how to see things will change in the future, as I understood. And you talked about pattern recognition on an individual and also team and organizational level, right? And dealing with complexity. And there is something else you said: read the field. Of course, resilience was the last one, but also you talked about reading the field. And in order to read the field, my understanding is there this component of self-awareness again.
Yeah.
There is something I listened to also from an author, I forgot her name recently, on another podcast, that she was explaining that the self-resilience has 2 components. The first one is knowing yourself and your patterns going within. And the second one of self-awareness is to know how other people perceive you. The first one, I assume it is easier to do when you sit with yourself and you know your emotions, for example, is an indicator, and other things you can work in yourself. But I'm curious, like, how can I know how others perceive me? What habits can I build to know, to remind myself how others are looking at me?
So the easiest way is just to ask.
Okay.
So I think, so what we already talked about is like observation second order. This is also one possibility to look at yourself from the outside and to step in, maybe also to step in someone else's shoes and try to look at you and your presence. Maybe I really love to work with people when they are like in like a tension or a conflict with someone else, to put two piece of paper on the ground and say, okay, step into your shoes and now step into the position of the other person and look at yourself. So what arises in you? And this is also something that you can do and use, where you can use constellation work. Very good to step into someone else's shoes. I would not say that's a habit, but it is definitely a tool you can use in order to recognize some blind spots that you may have. Yeah. But I really also love like learning together with peers. Only peers, but when you're also in a leadership position, when you have like feedback sessions, please always ask also, do you have any feedback for me as a leader? How can I also improve? Because everybody is different, and leadership, everybody needs a different kind of leadership. So of course it is not adaptable to everybody, but when you have like, I don't know, a team of 10, 12 people, you can ask each individually, okay, is my leadership style and how our connection here suitable for you? Yeah. Do you feel safe? Do you have the feeling you can reach out? Do I need anything? Do I need to improve anything in order that you can do? So this is also something to go into a feedback loop with your employees, also with your peers. So when you learn, like when you are a part of the leadership journey in your in your company, sometimes like in bigger companies, you have like leadership development journeys, and their peers come together and you learn together. And this is a factor that we work a lot. So we design a lot of these leadership journeys with also with this peer factor. Yeah. And so have communities of practice. Yeah. And learn from each other and ask for each other for feedback. Yeah. What we also love, so when we design such learning journeys, sometimes we work with women, like it's called Women to Women Confidence Circle. And this is a group of women where juniors and seniors connected with like project managers and leaders. And they are matched. And the part of one of these like formats is two-way mentoringship. And this means exactly how it says. You are mentoring each other, not just the leader, the junior, but also the junior, the leader. And to maybe also bring that into daily practice. Yeah. And making it safe that you can talk to people on that and to ask your leader if he or she wants to have some feedback. Yeah. But of course, it needs to feel safe. It doesn't feel safe that it's not going to happen and you are just getting maybe really good feedback because it doesn't really feel safe. Yeah.
By the way, now you just reminded me of like the content that I had now with you.
Mhm.
Maybe it's more than how much you gave, you explained, and the whole challenge in our MBA. So most of the times you were the one who's asking questions,
Mhm.
and this is also the new way of learning. And I think this is how you can connect more with others. Like most of the time you were listening. This is how you can lead, right? Listen, ask questions, and
Yeah.
and then see the active listening practices that you were talking about. See which one fits here, and then keep doing this. And this is how you can connect deeply, and then
Okay.
have impact, right?
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think this is a huge leadership skill, to being able to ask the questions.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
So now there are two questions I chose for you from two different previous guests. The
Okay.
first one is Sarka Resh. Her question was, how are you working on your own growth mindset?
Constantly going into my observation, trying to figure out where do I step into unconscious patterns,
Mm.
where also confronting myself with new impulses from outside. So when it is a book or a podcast or a good talk to someone else. So yeah, always reaching out for something new, I would say, and being also aware when I'm open for it and when not. And this comes also with knowing yourself. Do I have now the state and the mind and the open mind to be touched by something new? Or is it too much now? and I need more inner like processes to be with myself and try to figure out how do I relax and get out of stress mode and whatever.
Mm. Thank you. The other one is a bit out of the box, which is how can leaders? So
Yes.
she's thinking about the whole world,
Mhm.
and she's thinking about how people, for example, or children around the world, they cannot have access to technology.
Okay.
So her question was, how can leaders
Mhm.
like think globally
Mhm.
and help close the digital divide? So access to technology, education, and opportunity becomes equal on
Mm.
a global level.
And you're referring as leaders, the change makers of of the world, or are you referring to leaders in companies or?
I should have asked her the question actually. I would just say, as you understand it, like
Mhm.
as I would not also define leaders with a specific title myself, as I understand leadership, or like the president of a country, but
Yeah.
anyone who is interested in solving global issues.
Mm. Kind of really hard question here.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. In your own circle of influence here, I think that's a good key orientation. Yeah, trying to figure out okay, what kind of circle of control and influence are you now operating in? And when I refer to myself, I would say how can I influence it, or how can I change or make it like a little bit step into change, is building up awareness
Hmm.
on that term. So telling stories about it, what I witnessed or what would I have witnessed, stories of success, stories of failure, and maybe talking to the right people who can change.
Hmm. Hmm.
That would be my answer.
Thank you. What is your question for a future guest? Something you're curious about, want to hear a new perspective on it,
Mm-hmm.
especially something related to inner leadership, inclusion, the future of work, the topics that we usually talk about.
I think one of the questions I'm already like thinking about myself is how can we bring more optimism into this polycrisis that we now experiencing in this environment. So what is my circle of influence to bring more optimistic attitude into the place?
Hmm. And when you're talking about the crisis, you're talking also about, without going in details, also politics, right?
Everything, yeah. Social
Hmm.
polarization, geopolitical like tensions, um, technical disruptions, everything that we are now witnessing on so overlaid crises and complexity. I myself find in struggling a lot of time, yeah, being optimistic. And I think this is something that we should focus on more,
Hmm.
because when I'm not when I'm in this mode of bitterness and frustration, this doesn't bring like the right action. Gives my mind like a shadow, I would say.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's really necessary, like to also deal with that emotion, because emotions like frustration and anger are really important also to move forward. But I think the world can use a little bit more optimism
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Thank you, Anna. I really enjoyed the conversation. Is there anything important that we haven't talked about yet?
for sure a lot. But for sure a lot. But I don't care. It is what it is, and I'm happy. So, and I'm
No,
sure.
you can pick one and
No,
tell me.
actually, I can't think of it clearly, but it is it. I think, of course, every would you ask me the question tomorrow, there would be completely different answers for sure.
Mm, mm,
So I can also be accepted from what that is or what it is. And but there is nothing that is like urgent and say, please, I need
uh,
to mention that
mm.
again.
Actually, I haven't also asked you all the questions that came to my mind, but that was the practice that I'm also practicing, like really present and see what you are
Yeah,
saying and
yeah.
reflecting with you. So the last two questions I would like to ask you is, What brings you joy? First one.
Human connection.
Mm.
This really brings me joy. We just had like a team dialogue just before the podcast here, and it was such a pleasure to being touched emotionally and feeling connected with the team, and yeah, this authenticity that we have, and we can share, and human connection, the connection that we have, and the connection that I have with my partner, the connection that I have with my family and friends. So this really brings me joy.
Thank you for sharing. And what are you grateful for the most?
This could be actually the same answer.
The same answer?
No, all the invitation that are coming all the way to me, and that I'm able to respond. Yeah, and my openness to it. I think that's what I'm really grateful for, and of course everything else that I'm allowed to live in the world like that I'm living in. So yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
I mean, as I said, I would maybe spend at least another hour with you now, asking you the rest of the questions that I haven't asked now, looking at them. But I enjoyed the conversation. I felt it was really, for me, deep. And we talked about resilience in a deep level for me. Also, talking about the patterns, for example, the recognition, talking about self-awareness, active listening. So, and many other things. So, also the future of work. So, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
if you want to say anything in the end, this
No,
is the last chance.
thank you for this opportunity and for the connection and the talk. It really felt like we were sitting together on the couch and just talk about about resilience and everything. So it was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations for listening until the end. You are in the top 25% of listeners. Studies show that we forget up to 70% of what we hear within 24 hours. But when we repeat an insight by sharing it with someone, commenting, or journaling it, it moves into long-term memory. So now tell me, what are your 1 to 3 takeaways you're keeping from this conversation? Enjoy every moment. Until next time.